Humor. And I know that some of you who are listening to this are German and now already think, maybe not for me. Yes, it will be for you. Be sure. And no matter where you come from, you will have massive benefits for your business when you listen to this session today. Humor in business. Discover the business advantage of happiness, kindness, and laughter. Especially at the moment with the times we have right now, it is even more important to use these techniques. But the problem is how to use them and how to use them in a business way. And we have the worldwide leading expert on that topic with us here today. Welcome, Hall of Fame speaker, Tim Gard.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me, my friend.
Thank you very much. So thanks for taking the time all across the pond from the US. Very happy to have you here. So when we use humor in business, the first question, of course, is how does humor and business get together? Isn't it? I mean, when I run a business, I am in for the profit. So where does humor happen there?
Well, humor is just combining of ideas that aren't normally associated with one another. It's, to me, at the height of creativity. You know, we try to be creative in business to make more sales, to connect with people. But when we start using humor intentionally, we can be more creative. We can increase our likability, which we know increases sales. And it can also help us refresh and renew ourselves to be able to stay at our best, at our peak performance.
So, of course, it might be quite challenging. Let's say we're an international business based in London and Germany, and we do engineering, reproduce machine parts. So we have people who normally come from university, very down-to-earth business. And even the sales there is very formal. We know our clients for decades. How can I use humor to any kind of business benefit there?
Well, I think, we're able to laugh at ourselves. As C.W. Metcalf says, to laugh not with ridicule, but with objectivity and acceptance of self. And so I might make fun of the fact that that I've been traveling so much. A common subject to both of us may be that the travel or being required to travel. And as you know, I travel with chicken feet sticking out of my suitcase. I would probably have my rollerboard at the meeting, and people would say, well, what's the chicken feet? What's with that? And I'd say, well, I put my bag in the overhead. People move my bag since I put the chicken feet in there. It doesn't happen anymore. People look at it and they just leave it alone. They would laugh. I would laugh. And it's something, they understand about airline travel and bags and things like that. It's just sharing a bit of laughter over something that you normally wouldn't do.
Yeah. Of course, now some people will say, okay, you have the talent, you have the experience, you're a great guy on stage. I think I saw you speak at a minimum of 10 different conferences all over the world. Many people will say, look, Tim, I'm not funny. So how can I be funny when I'm just not? I mean, I am German by definition. I am not funny. That's how we were born. So how do I start doing humor when I say I am not funny? Because no one ever taught me how to start.
Well, I think that a lot of people, there's all this research going on about if someone's visual or auditory and communicators. And I don't want to get into that, but I will say that most of us are visual humor or auditory humor. Like we hear or can speak a story, that'd be auditory. Or if it's a visual, something we see that makes us laugh. I carry these little, not to keep going on chickens, but I carry these little itty bitty chickens with me wherever I go. And years ago, gave some to you. Yes. They're about, how big would you say they are?
Maybe half of my smallest finger.
Yeah, but they're perfect little rubber chickens that size. And you had commented that they were rather humorous. You put them in your organizer for all your wires and your travel and things like that, and then just waited for somebody to notice what happened and tell them what happened.
Yes, I mean, that happened at the airport in Hamburg, and they put my bag aside, which of course is never the moment. That's not what you want to have. You're on travel, and then they pull your bag out, and you think, oh, here we are, random security check, and they get this tiny bit out of my. They're not looking at my laptop. They're not looking at any kind of liquid I forgot in there. They just got a small little plate, like gridded, if you know the way you put all your cables in, and they just went to me and say, "What are these?" And I say, "Rubber chicken," and the whole security start bursting out laughing loud. Even the people waiting said, "Excuse me, rubber chicken?" And then why don't you have like a big one? Why do you have these small ones? And I said, because the big ones aren't funny, and the whole hall starts laughing in a moment of like COVID-19 grim atmosphere, just a moment of delight, which people will remember for maybe days, if not years.
Exactly. It's so unexpected and used so well. It was delightful.
Yeah. So when we look at your client list like Chorus, IBM, Qantas, Cisco, US Bank, Citibank, Western, like every major corporation booked you as a speaker, what do they normally ask you for? Is it just entertainment, or are they, because normally today, especially with compliance, every speaker who is booked has to show what's the return on invest. So what do they book you for? What are they asking you for when they book you for conferences online or remotely or wherever they're going to book you?
Well, the biggest thing has been to help people be able to laugh at themselves, to refresh and renew, to give a different point of view about the stressors that they all may run into. Angry people, everybody right now is dealing with extremely angry, short-tempered people. Mm-hmm. And one of the best ways to deal with them is to not be one yourself. That we have to be able to laugh at ourselves and not get so angry over every little thing. And so a lot of times when I brought in, it's to look at how to respond, to learn to act and not react to situational stress, and that we can't change the things that happen to us or around us. We change our perception of those things. And I mean, just real quickly, I'm in a taxi cab. One of the first times I'd ridden in one in a long time, and not an Uber. And I'm in Denver, Colorado. We're going to the airport here last year, and this driver is hitting his hands on the dash, and he's just angry. And I said, "What's the matter?" And he said, "Well, it's traffic." And I said, "Well, it's 5:00, And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "How long you been a driver?" And he said, 22 years. And I said, "How long in Denver?" He said, 22 years. And I said, "I don't know how to tell this to you, but it's going to happen again tomorrow." If you're a taxi driver and you can't deal with traffic, you probably don't want to be in Munich or Berlin, or you don't want to be in a big city that you're setting yourself up to fail. And I said, the bottom line with it is that you understand this is going to happen, and then come up with other ways of dealing with it, work different hours, but don't set yourself up to fail.
Do you think that because some people will maybe say, "Oh, I'm a very serious person." Do you think that anyone can change in a way to become at least humorous or take a different perspective on this? Do you think that really anyone can change that way?
I do think that. I think everybody has things that they will find funny. It might be very odd. It might be, years ago, I worked for the federal government in the US, and I worked with a person who I never saw laugh until like the week before I left. Two of the custodians were bending over to pick up the same bucket, and they both bonked their heads together, and he just burst out laughing. And I thought, well, that's for him. That was what he was looking for. I think everybody has something they find funny. What we have to do is learn to harness that so that we can go back and remember it. Like the Carol Burnett show in the US here is really one of my all-time favorite variety shows from the 60s and 70s. I go back and watch some of the old Harvey Korman, Tim Conway skits because they make me laugh over and over. And I do it intentionally so that I don't let the stress build up. I use it as a stress reducer, and it works effectively every time.
So, of course, one question I also have to ask today, when it comes to humor, today you can easily make a joke, even unintentionally, and suddenly you lose a client over just one thing you probably said, even without intending to do something wrong. How do people know where is the line you should not or cannot cross? And especially when people say, "Oh, I don't have that much empathy, I easily might do something wrong." How can people know what to do and what not to do when it comes to humor?
Well, for me, it's always been a couple things. The first is, if you wouldn't say the line to your grandmother or your 6-year-old daughter, then chances are, you probably shouldn't use it at work. Is that and when I bring that up, is that if you have to stop and question yourself if you should use it, then the answer is no. When in doubt, leave it out. That It's never going to be worth the return if you have to worry about how somebody will respond. And then the second thing is, it's okay to laugh at yourself. And again, not with ridicule, but objectivity. But laughing at yourself is okay. And then the third thing would be what the intent is. Why are you doing this? Are you poking fun at somebody or making fun of somebody? And if that's the case, probably better back off on it too. We want to use it for a positive reason and not for negative or to hurt.
So let's say someone is listening. Let's assume someone is listening to the podcast right now and thinks, I think I might put a bit of humor into, let's say, my next financial presentation, which is really dry and really boring. Just to wrap this whole interview up, what are Tim Gard's top 3 tips? Where to start right now? Tim Gard's top 3 tips to start with humor.
Well, the first one would be when you're in a sales presentation like that, you are not doing a documentary. If you tell a story, it's not a documentary of whatever happened in that incident. Think of it as a feature film. We want that story to be interesting and fun. We want it to be not over long. It should be thought of. It's not just the facts. It's got to be entertaining. And the second thing is, it's got to be understandable. That both parties need to understand. If I'm telling some story about super colliders or something, and the person that's there is a beef grower, chances are the story is not going to be a hit. Is it common understanding?
Yeah.
And the last part is when you look at where your story is going, is that you're watching the people to see what sort of visual and auditory cues they're giving as far as feedback. If they're looking at you with a blank stare, I think that maybe the story needs a little bit of work. The thing to remember about all of it is that you can, in fact, work on these things before you give the presentation. That's one of the things that I like. I work as an executive coach with people to help them hone these stories in. But you want to go in prepared with a story that's as long or as short as it should be, that makes exactly the sales point we want to make and is memorable. But it doesn't happen by accident. It's done on purpose.
Excellent. That is excellent advice for our listeners. Of course, I'm going to put your contact data in the show notes of this podcast. So when people have any additional aspects which they like to talk about, they can get in touch with you directly, or when they, which I can only highly recommend, want to book you as their speaker for their next conference. So the only thing I have left to say at the end of the interview is, Tim, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me. Invite me back again.